Today we're going to talk about something called winding sticks. They're also called winding sticks, and both names are politically correct, so you can use either one of them. What they're used for is to determine the twist in a wood, and it's always nice to know the twists in your wood because it helps you take out the frustration and make you a better woodworker. So let me show you how these are made and what they look like, and then we'll show you how to use them. Like most woodworkers, I prefer to make my own, and for something like this I really like to use MDF, and I'll tell you why. MDF is a nice stable wood product. It may expand and contract a little bit, but it very rarely warps, and it's very important that when you have something like this that it doesn't warp, because you always want these to be flat and true. Now mine are 16 inches long by 2.5 inches high. At the bottom they're 3/4 of an inch, but at the top they're only 1/4 of an inch, so you can see there's a little bit of a wedge shape to it. And the reason for that is so that they tend to stand up, because the way we use them is standing up, and when they're a little heavier at the bottom they tend to stand up and not fall over as easily. Now you'll also notice that I've got some markings on mine, just a center mark on each one of these, and at each end I have a black mark on one and nothing on the other. And the reason for that is when you have beige on beige, it's very hard to tell. But when you have beige on black, you can see just that. You can see how much easier it is to judge the difference and if there would be some difference from end to end. So let's show you how to use these. Basically the way a winding stick works is we put one at one end of the board and one at the back end of a board. But before you even do that, and you can see that I've got this set up on my workbench, the first thing you need to do is make sure that the surface that you're working on is not twisted. And my workbench over the years, because it's bolted together and it's been moved around, it moves a little bit, and I've been able to use some shims on one side of it so I can actually make it level. Normally, to use the winding sticks, I'd be doing it on my table saw or on my jointer that I know the table is flat from one side to another, but for this we're going to use the workbench. So you can see I have these lined up on the bench. In a moment I'm going to drop the camera down so we can just barely sight over this one and see just the very tips of either side of the back winding stick. There, now if you look very closely, here's the front, and at the back you can just barely see a little strip on either side, and that strip on either side should be exactly the same if this table were absolutely level, and it may not be perfect, but it's close enough for what we want to do right now. Now the purpose of all this, of course, is because now I have a board on here, and I picked a board that was fairly flat. I thought it had a little bit of a wind to it, but when I put the winding sticks on, it makes a big difference. So I'm going to show you without the winding sticks first of all, then I'll show you with the winding sticks so you can really see the difference. So there's that board, and you can see that it's a little hard to tell whether it's warped or not. Watch when we put the winding sticks on. And now you can really see the difference, because this side here is quite a bit higher than this side over here. So what that tells us is that this board, which we knew before we put it on here, is a little bit warped. But the other thing that you can do, and this is where this really starts becoming an advantage, is you can move this along, and I'll just move it sort of halfway into the board, and you can see, get out of the way there so you can see that, where that difference is, and you can see that it's pretty closely aligned now, And as you get closer, of course, it'll get better and better. So at different points throughout the board, you can actually tell how bad that board is warped. You know, most of you are saying, okay, well, that's really cool, but so what? And the other half of you are saying, well, I get it, but so what? How do I fix it? And here's the point. When you can read a board using your winding sticks to determine where the high spots are, what I use is one of my woodworking crayons, and I'll actually mark the area that's high, because that area, I want to hit that through the jointer first, because then I know where it is. And when you're running wood through the jointer, for example, you always want to make sure that when you start running it through, that as soon as you can put pressure on the outfeed table, that's where you want to be, so that the rest of the board drags through, and the jointer should automatically make the rest of that, more even. And it may take several passes to do that. If you're flattening boards on the planer, you'll know where the high spots are and the low spots when you're wedging. And even if you're hand planing, you're going to know where the areas, where the high spots and the low spots are, so that you can start concentrating on those areas. So it's all about reading the wood before you get started. And now you know how to make them, you know where to use them and how to use them, and most of all, how to make the best use of them so that you can make your wood as flat and even and straight, which of course makes woodworking that much more pleasurable when you're not fighting the wood, and it makes your projects that much easier to come together. One last thing before we go, I just want to remind you that most of these videos that I do, I also write an article on Woodwork Web, and the link is directly below in the description field directly below the video, so it's easy to find. And sometimes there's detail in there, and often there's links to other parts of the internet where you may want to check other things out. If you haven't already subscribed, we ask you to do that. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and stay tuned, because we got lots more builds and things coming your way. I'm Colin Canet for Woodwork Web.